The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
My name is Leo Connors. I'm your host, and tonight I got a very special guest on. Professional wrestler Chase Del Monte. Chase, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
I much appreciate it. Real quick, I want to give a couple shout-outs to Anthony Mark Balkas, Anthony Miller, you know Squeaks.
Who doesn't know Squeaks?
Pat Dillon, who just had a great Harvest Havoc card Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. Great night of wrestling. My old co-host Derek Dukes. And then my kids, Elizabeth, Michael, Sarah, my grandson, Isaiah, and my buddy Daryl in the control room that you just met.
Anyone else? Your neighbors, cousins, anybody else before you get to what's really important?
No, what about your, the Logan brothers? Are they watching you on this? They probably ain't watching this.
Come on, hooligans support one another.
Nice. Good, all right. All right, so Chase, where did you grow up?
I grew up on the Jersey Shore, a little outside Asbury Park, home of the Boss and Bon Jovi.
Nice. Okay. Is Bam Bam Bigelow from there, too?
Oh, sure is, Asbury Park.
Yeah. All right, did you play sports as a kid?
I didn't play many sports as a kid. I did wrestle growing up a little bit.
Okay.
I actually, growing up through high school and college, I was more pre-med. I was an athletic trainer for a while. Still comes in use when I tape my wrists. And usually the first stop in locker rooms if someone has an injury.
Yeah, I have to stop you there for a second. Let's see you around.
Oh, it's nothing.
Wow.
You can barely see it now.
No doubt. That was crazy, though.
It was pretty crazy. I'm not worth the sympathy. I can tell you that much.
Right,
but
I don't think you were looking for any, though, that night.
I was not.
No.
I was more angry that it screwed up my match in progress.
Right.
But still got the win.
Nice. All right, so how old were you when you first saw wrestling? And did you love it right away?
I'm probably not the standard guy. I did like wrestling. I mean, I always remember growing up, watching it on Saturdays,
right.
But I wasn't one of those, full bore, only wrestling kind of guys. Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, I had a friend in the neighborhood that would sometimes get the pay-per-views every so often. I would go over there. And I always kind of kept up with it. I had other friends who had magazines and stuff who kind of kept me more in tune with it. But it wasn't really to the mid to late 90s when I really caught on. Shawn Michaels really caught my eye, and then obviously with the birth of the Attitude Era, that's when I really caught on.
I think Shawn Michaels is the greatest in-ring worker. People say Ric Flair. Everyone's got their own opinion, but man, he was just incredible.
It's not an argument. Yeah. It's Shawn Michaels.
So, all right, so you did have some friends that liked it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did no backyard, just not real, how people got rings. Just I used to do it in the grass. Just wrestle.
Yeah. In the basement, throwing down some of the pillow cushions and stuff, and trampolines and such like that. Nothing crazy hardcore. No fire and tacks and anything like that. I'm a little too pretty for that.
All right. Did you go to? I like to ask this. I didn't start asking this question, but did you go to any indie shows before you became involved in wrestling?
I've been to one indie show before I started training,
really?
And it was at my high school. I didn't even really know of independent wrestling at the time. Right. I only really knew, WWF, WCW, and ECW. But they were having a wrestling show. Stevie Richards was on the card.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, wrestling in my school gym. How could I say no?
Right.
And all my other friends didn't want to go. So I ended up going alone and sitting in the front row, but I had a blast.
Nice.
And that was kind of my first experience into indie wrestling, kind of seeing it on a smaller scale like that.
That must have been pretty cool. All right. So when did you decide you wanted to train to become a pro wrestler?
So it was a kind of a slower process.
Yep.
I went to Villanova. I graduated in 2003. So as I was kind of coming to the end of college, I was weighing my options of what I wanted to do. I didn't really have much plans. By then I had, really grown to love wrestling. I mean, I was that wrestling guy in college.
Right.
All Raw, SmackDowns were at my house. We would try to get the pay-per-views whenever we could, or we'd go to local restaurants. And the more and more as I kind of was looking at it, I'd talk to some of my friends, and it kind of became, if there was a time I was going to do it, what the hell, I don't have anything else going on.
Right.
It also happened to coincide with a buddy of mine who was a year ahead of me in school, he was getting a place in Somerville. So as I was looking up wrestling schools, I came across Killer Kowalski's, which I had known about through Triple H and all the stories that I had heard. So it kind of matched up. The place where my buddy was looking to move was Somerville. Killer's school was right in Malden. It seemed like kind of a layup.
Right. Nice. And what year was that?
That was 2003.
2003. All right. So now when you ended up going to Killer School.
I went once to Killer's School.
Okay.
So I moved up to Boston in September of 2003 after I graduated in May. When I came up in August to check out our place, to check out the wrestling school, I went down to Killer's. He was still running class at that point, but he wasn't taking on any new students. They still had the ring. He was there, somewhat leading classes from the side. I talked to him for a while, and he gave me a piece of paper that said, in a couple of weeks, by the time I'd move up, his school was going to officially be transitioning over to the Chaotic Training Center. So he kind of led me to them.
Mike Hollow.
Mike Hollow.
Right. So Mike Hollow trained you, and I think Duke Dalton?
Duke Dalton,
okay.
Absolutely. When I first got started, Duke's was really the hands-on guy for at least my first couple months. I was obviously starting off in the beginner ring, and that's where Duke's really more was, working hands-on with the kind of the newer students, at least some of the younger guys. So at least my first, 3 to 6 months was a lot more Duke's than anything.
Who else was in your class?
That's
still around, I guess.
Well, the first guy I ever met when I walked into wrestling school, he put his hand out, shook his hand, told me his name was something, and I was like, "What is it?" And he said something that sounded like Thomas or Tom. And I was like, "What?" He said it again, and he just said, "Just call me T." He would turn out to be Tommaso Ciampa.
Right.
They're not exactly in my class. They had a couple of years on me.
Yep.
Handsome Johnny, now Warbeard Hansen.
Yes.
Brian Malonis. Again, also started before me, but the Mighty Mini, Andre Lyons.
I remember those guys. I liked Andre, too.
They were very, very good friends of mine.
Nice. Yeah, because all you guys ended up going down to a lot of these wrestled in the Super 8. Mm-hmm. I mean, Andre, was that his last match ever in the Super 8? Because I know he got hurt, or he was hurt going into the match or something like that. I'd love to get him on here.
Little known fact, he was always hurt.
Really?
Yes. Majority of his career, he wrestled with no ACL in his knee.
Wow.
For the level of things he was able to do, was pretty amazing that he had the longevity that he had. Finally, it went, I forget the exact match, I knew at a time, but his knee finally went. Right. And when it did, it became more and more common that his knee would kind of pop out of the socket during matches. They were working for WFA. Mighty Mini and Andre as the A-list. Yes. And there was actually a match, he wrestled a ladder match, and me and the Logans had gone to see them. And his knee popped out, and I was actually front row, so he put his leg through, and I was actually able to pop it back into place for him so he could continue the match. But then he had the Super 8 booked. He was actually the first one booked for that year's Super 8, so he knew going into it. Unfortunately, his knee was, in pretty bad shape by then.
Right.
So I believe maybe he had one more match somewhere, but I mean, that really pretty much was the end for him.
Right. It's too bad because the kid's had a lot of talent.
He sure did.
And
taught me a lot.
Mighty Mini don't wrestle anymore either.
No, he does not. Those two actually were the first two people I became really close with.
Right.
They really helped me when I was coming up.
Yep.
As a green guy, I was several years older than them. Right. But the whole respect business of wrestling wasn't lost on me. I came from a fraternity, so I kind of knew the people who came before you, were worthy of your respect and stuff, and they paid it back to me. When I would walk into locker rooms with them, some of the other veterans, Maverick Wild, Adam Booker, all took a liking to me because they kind of put their name on me.
Right. There's so much talent back then. Even there was still so, and there's so much more talent even now. It's crazy how much talent has always come from the New England area.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it all really goes back to Killer Kowalski. I mean, he was the first one to really open up a wrestling school, and setting roots down in New England kind of started that. I mean, that's a place where legitimate talent came to be trained, and still all call home to.
Yeah, well, people come from all over. You said you came down. You wanted to be trained there from Jersey. Kazarian came from California. I mean, people aren't stupid, that's for sure.
Flip Gordon came from Montana.
Yeah, that's right, too. Yeah, that's right. He told me that story right here. All right, so I just want to talk a little about the two Super 8s you were in.
All right.
You were in the 2008 Super 8,
Yep, that's the first one.
And you took on another local guy,
Scott Reed.
Scott Reed,
Yep.
who you also had a lot of tag team matches
Yes.
with when you teamed with Brandon Locke. There's so much stuff to cover. That's why I'm all over the place, because I don't know where, you know what I mean? It's crazy how much stuff you've done in this area.
14 years to sift through.
Right. And now in the second round, though, you lost to Alex Kozlov.
That's right.
Now, how was that match? Because he's a hell of a talent, too.
He was awesome. He was a really cool guy.
Yeah.
I remember my match with Scott better. It was a first round matchup. Usually the first round, you have more time.
Right.
You have more time to actually put on the match. You have more time to talk. By the time you're into the second round, everyone's kind of rushing.
Right.
Alex would go on to get into the finals, so he had other stuff to worry about as
Right.
well. So we were busy, but he was great to work with. He seemed pretty entertained by me. I had some different ideas for him, using his little dancing gimmick with the hat and stuff. That seemed to pop him. Yeah, I enjoyed him. He was a really good guy.
Nice. And the winner of that one was Aiden Chambers.
That's right. Yep.
And then you came back in 2010, and you lost to the eventual winner, the guy you just talked about, Tommaso Ciampa.
I did. That one I was actually an alternate. A kid went down for an injury.
Okay.
I was, as well as just being in 2 Super 8s, I was a long-time ECWA regular roster member. I've been there for about...
You're a 2-time Mid-Atlantic champ. You're an ECW heavyweight champ.
Correct.
So
I was going to be at the show anyway. So
Right.
Jim contacted me, asked if I'd like to be in another Super 8. I, of course, jumped at the opportunity.
Nice.
I do still find it funny, though, that I traveled all the way down to make it into the worldwide renowned Super 8 and work 2 people that I've worked for
You could have worked them
1,000
right?
times.
That's all right.
Right down the street.
But that must have been a good moment for you, for Tommaso and you being there and stuff too. I mean,
Absolutely.
And now all 3 Logans have wrestled in that too, correct?
Yep. Nick Logan,
Nick
usually
won it, right?
Yeah. Nick, the oft forgotten about Logan.
Right.
He did end up winning it. Brian was the first one in it, then Matt, then me, then Nick.
Nice. Now Nick, is he doing MMA?
He did for a short period
he's
of
not doing
time.
it anymore?
No, yeah. He won a couple amateur fights, had a pro fight. Now he's married with children, and
Oh yeah.
you know how that goes.
Yeah, I sure do, man. My children, I got probably a kid older than you. That's no lie. All right, so let's talk about some of the companies you work for.
Sure.
When you first broke in, who'd you wrestle for?
So my first match ever was
Yes.
for a smaller company in Lowell called AWE.
Okay.
That's kind of where I first met the Logans.
Was that at the PAV?
That is at the PAV.
Todd Super wrestle for them too? Later or something, maybe. No.
No. So they first, a little indie conspiracy. They had the PAV.
Yeah.
A lot of us chaotic guys started working with it. They were much smaller shows, much lower level production, but fun shows.
Well, everything. Yeah, no, I hear you. I can have fun at any show, so I'm glad you said that. 'Cause it's true.
And especially for us young guys, we were just cutting our teeth, so we just needed to get out there in front of crowds to help work on our craft. So then some of the, Fat Pants, who was refereeing for Chaotic, he came to the show and stuff, and, we all started kind of looking around and being like, this building has a lot more potential.
Right.
So, I was only, I was still green as grass, so I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but I did know that, within a month or 2, Chaotic was running the PAV, not AWE, and
Yeah, well, guess what? The PAV was making a lot more money once you guys started taking over, too, because the place was packed all the time.
yeah.
No offense to anybody. I think there was a girl involved with that. She hit me up on Facebook one day and talked to me, saying, I'd love to go on the show. I'm like, what, to talk about that Fed that, that honestly, that didn't have a lot of respect. That's all I can say about it. I'm not one to bash people, but.
Yeah, no, there's nothing bad to say about them. They treated me very well.
Right.
It's really where me and the Logans first met. They gave us opportunities to get out there on their shows.
Right.
And again, just, give us the practice that we needed in front of crowds. They were a smaller show. They only, had a couple people. They didn't really have a financial backer.
Right.
These were just a couple local guys looking to put on a local show. No harm, no foul. But, bigger companies are always going to gobble up smaller ones.
Right. And didn't Mark Mess work for them, too? Do you remember him?
Yes, he did. The AWA
I was
used
shocked,
to ring.
because I only seen him in, magazines, him and his brother Troy. And I'm looking, I'm like, dude, are you Mark Mess? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what the hell are you doing in Lowell, Massachusetts, All right, so from there, what was the next company?
So from AWE,
Chaotic?
Pretty much, so AWE was where I had my first actual match.
Right.
Then I was booked for the next Chaotic show. I worked an EWA show. I believe in between there. Maybe one or two others. There was a time I wrestled for a one-off company in front of 3 people somewhere in the backwoods of Maine. That was a real, really made me think that I was really chasing my dream.
Right.
But then, yeah, but within the next month, I made my debut at Chaotic.
Nice. And I see, like we talked, you wrestled in the ECWA New England Championship Wrestling.
Yep.
You were a tag team champion?
I was a tag team champion with the Rocket Fred Curry.
Yes, with Fred Curry. I remember I used to read about his father.
Yep.
And then his grandfather,
Yep.
the Bull. All right. So from there, from Chaotic, you ended up going to an ECW or?
Yeah, I mean, Chaotic was really, always been my home. That's kind of where everything branched off from. We started having a talent exchange with Chaotic, IWF in New Jersey, and ECWA. Seeing that I was a New Jersey native, I was kind of the first one to go there, try my hand at their shows. Then Jim Kettner came up to one of our shows at Chaotic. Really loved, the babyface chase coming out to Bad Medicine with the long rock-style hair that I used to do. So then at that time, they were only really doing one-offs. They were bringing down usually 1 or 2 guys in a one-off capacity.
Right. I remember seeing Mozart Fontaine.
Yep. And then me and Arch Kincaid were really the first ones to really latch on and not just become part of a talent exchange, but really, become a part of their roster.
Right. That's cool. Now, it's funny because Mav mentioned this guy the other day, and so it'll be the second time this guy's been mentioned in a couple of weeks. But you ever wrestled JJ, the ring crew guy? Matt brought him up out. I never would have thought to ask him. He brought him up.
I have wrestled JJ, the ring crew guy. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He means well.
All right. There you go. And he also brought up on Cheetah Master.
Cheetah Master.
Did you wrestle the Cheetah Master?
He might have wrestled again now, so I don't know if I still hold the card in my hat, but I was involved in Cheetah Master's last official match in the ECWA.
Wow. I don't think he's wrestled. I haven't seen anything.
I haven't seen anything. Maybe he's done one-offs for smaller promotions down there. I don't really keep up with the Delaware scene, but it was him and Ace Darling versus me and Freak Nasty down there. Nice. And to work with the Cheeto it was certainly a memorable experience.
Well, I'm going to bring up one more guy from there, and I know he was one of the biggest nemesis to Cheetah Master, and I think he still has a problem walking up the steps, Mr. Ooh La La, who was a guest right here on this show.
Mr. Ooh La La was one of my big feuds down in the ECWA. Yes. He's another guy who really helped me in the beginning. Monsieur Ooh La La certainly knows the character side of the business. Right. For a guy who's been doing it as long as he has, at ECWA and in front of, they have the same crowds day in and day out. But he continues to entertain them. He always is switching up his shtick. It's a lot like the Three Stooges, but he keeps you off balance.
Yeah, no doubt. Great guy. All right, so now I just want to kind of talk about your tag teams because I'm a huge. All right, one question here. Like I said, I'm all over the place. Do you prefer single matches or tag team matches?
Single matches.
Singles, yeah, because I love watching tag. I'd rather watch a tag team match.
So I love tag team wrestling. Right. It's what it's why I'm so close with the Logans. That's how kind of our friendship started. But for me personally, I don't like to share the spotlight with anybody. I want all the attention on me.
Yeah. I understand that altogether. Yeah, that's understandable.
Before you even get into it, though, I will openly admit that I'm not sure if I can use the word, but I am a bit of a tag team whore.
Yeah.
I've never had a very steady partnership with many people.
You've had a lot of, it's all over here, but you've wrestled some great teams in all of your different tag teams that you were in. You took on the Nigerian Nightmares.
Yes.
So what were you thinking when you first saw them?
So luckily, Aaron Hood, who just passed away a couple months ago, and his partner at the time. There's been different variations of the Nightmares.
Aaron was always in it.
Aaron was, to the extent of my knowledge, he was always in it. And the guy at the time, this guy Chucky, and you see them, they're huge. Yeah. Very soft-spoken, very, very nice guys. And the first time I believe I worked them was when I was working for Jersey All Pro. Yeah. And it was something I believe I was teaming with Chris Dickinson and No, yes, he wasn't the dirty daddy.
Oh,
back
he
then.
wasn't?
No. But they were doing some angle with Chris. I forget what it was. I was more of like, a pawn in the whole match. It wasn't about me at all. It was kind of about Chris. He kind of left me there to kind of, basically be squashed by them. And I mean, I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds, so I'm no small guy, especially by indie standards. But I felt like a child. I mean,
Huge.
One of them picked me. One of them was sitting on the top rope, and the other one, picks me up and puts me on his shoulder.
Right.
And I'm just sitting, and they just treating me like a baby. And then they gave me a big jumping power slam, and then Aaron, who's the bigger one of the two, I see him climbing the top rope, and he's going to come off with like a super fly splash. And there was certainly a minute where my life flashed before my eyes, but it took care of me.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, they were so big. They were great. I mean, they did some moves that was pretty impressive. You know what I mean? For big guys like that.
Yeah, just their size alone was impressive. I mean, they really were a sight to behold, and they certainly did lay it in.
Right, and now I'll go from the extreme to the smaller size. You had a nice feud when you were teaming in Locked and Loaded with Brandon Locke against the Blowout Boys, who aren't nearly as big as the Nightmares.
Again, they're another team who's seen multiple iterations.
Right.
So I believe when we were wrestling, it was Tommy Trouble and Danny E.
Yeah.
Who's now reffing down in, I believe it's on SmackDown.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, that's completely two different ends of the spectrum. Dan, though, before he got signed as a referee, was by far and away one of at least for the boys, favorite wrestler. Whenever he was out there, there would be a sellout at the monitor. Everyone was just going to watch because he just had this way of at least once or twice a match would just sell or take some sort of bump in just the most outrageous fashion. He was just so colorful and animated. I mean, literally had, all the boys in tears most of his matches.
And some of the other teams you took on in that with Brandon Locke was the Exotic Entertainment of Gregory Edwards and Christian Frost. Isn't Gregory Edwards Ted?
Yeah. Ted. Gregory, it was Ted and who?
And Christian Frost.
I don't remember that. I remember I worked Ted before.
It was written down.
And I remember working with Christian Frost.
Yeah.
I remember working them together, though, especially with Brandon. Maybe that was in NECW. That
Yeah.
might have been with Fred.
Okay.
Because I do remember working Christian Frost with at the old not Quincy, old Armory.
Braintree.
Let's say it was near North Andover. Anyway.
All right. Well, I know you wrestled against these guys with Brandon, the Lost Souls.
Yes.
Sledge and Scott Reed.
Sledge and Scott Reed. Again, me and Scott have always been intertwined. Always, we always seem to find a way back to wrestling each other. Sledge was a powerhouse.
Now that was for Chaotic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that was Chaotic.
So I just want to bring up a couple other teams, and then we'll get on to something else, because I was amazed that a lot of these teams, they were not known around here, but if you followed the magazines, you know who they were, the best around.
Yeah.
T.J. Cannon and Bruce Maxwell.
Yep.
Those kids, they came up to me. I was catering for PWU. They came up to eat, and I was like, "You're working?" They're like, "Yeah, we're wrestlers." I never expected it. They went in the ring that night, and I was blown away. Seriously, they were incredible.
They were. Brian Logan had broken his hand in a match, and him and Matt were doing pretty well. They were taking a lot of bookings, but Brian was going to, obviously not be able to wrestle.
Right.
And I had kind of been wrestling, I've been wrestling with them, since I started basically.
Right.
So I ended up actually taking a bunch of Brian's bookings.
Oh, okay.
And they were feuding with the best around in both ECWA and which ended up becoming a sister promotion called the TWA down in New Jersey. So I actually just, it was all kind of by chance and luck that, I ended up working with them several times over a couple months span.
Yeah. Great team.
Well, yeah, they were great. I think they just actually got back out there.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's good to hear. The Chick Magnets. Now, that was Mozart Fontaine.
Yep.
And I forget the other guy's name.
Mike Tobin and Brian Sosha.
Yep. Mike Tobin. Now, before he had that name, I think even before ECWA.
Yeah.
And a tag team without those two guys.
Yep.
All right, that's what I thought.
Tobin's a longtime veteran of the New York, New Jersey area. Then Jim brought him in to ECWA and made them the Chick Magnets, and they were often the foil for the Logan brothers. That was like, I think, all through the 7 or 8 years that we were down there was always, an undercurrent of Logan's chick magnets.
And I think his partner was the one that got hurt when the hit squad threw him into the wall. They used to do that wall shot at that building.
Oh yeah, like the lawn dart.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened to him. He got really hurt. But yeah, great tag team. How about the Valedictorians? I seen the Logans have a lot of matches with these guys too.
They had
Backs and Echoes. That was a great team.
Yeah, they
great
were.
Gimmick.
Yep. Yeah, a great gimmick. Such an odd pairing. Such an odd couple. I mean, to even just talk to them,
really?
Are just two completely different people. But they worked as a team. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching them. I usually saw them at the Chaotic shows, and they were a great tag team. Last tag team, great team, Pride. Brian Nunes and Dan Freitas, and that was when you teamed with Fred.
Right. Yep. That was in ECW.
Right,
We had a
Sheldon.
short little feud with them. They were great. They were very integral in the Logans when they were first broke out onto the scene. They wrestled 1,000 times.
Oh wow.
So then for me to kind of be able to get in there and kind of see what Matt and Brian were always talking about was a nice experience. And Brian Nunes to this day, that kick to the back he does is devastating. Devastating. If you're watching this, Brian.
We're gonna play the name game in a little bit, but I want to get into some fan questions now.
Sure.
All right. Nathan Fuller, he asked, did you ever wrestle Big Rick Fuller? We'll go with that one first because he's got two.
All right. Yes, I have wrestled Rick Fuller a couple times, and the chops hurt as much as you imagine. They made me weak in the knees.
Oh, I believe it. He's a big dude. And what was your favorite AWA match for Jeff Costa?
Ooh.
Nathan was a real big AD. He's from this area. So.
Man, some really good ones. There was one 4-way tag that we did in Claremont. It was me and Andre Lyons versus Dr. Heresy and Maverick, Adam Booker and Larry Huntley, Minnie and somebody. I can't remember the last team. But the AWA ring is a very small ring.
Yeah.
So to have a tag team match in that ring is complicated to begin with. And then to have 4 teams out there in that small little space, it was intricate.
I might know who Minnie's partner was. Was it Brian Black? I thought I saw them team for Jeff before. That's why.
Brian Black was doing the big German gimmick at that time. So I think he was champ on top. The most memorable match, though, wasn't mine.
All right.
It was Brian Black, since you mentioned him, versus the Patriot.
Okay.
Or, the Iron American, whatever his name was. Their version of the Patriot.
Oh, Captain USA.
Captain USA. There we go.
Captain USA.
Captain USA in a flag match with Lobster Man himself as the referee and all the boys out as lumberjacks.
Right.
And, talk about getting, something out of nothing. They barely did anything. And this crowd up in Claremont, was ready to riot. And at the very end, I think the babyface goes over, Lobster Man ends up screwing him, and they end up putting the flag over Lobster Man's face. And you can just see Jeff just laying back and just blowing up the flag like something out of a cartoon where it's and all the boys just around ringside were just dying.
That's awesome. Jeff was like the last of the real carny promoters, man.
He certainly was a carny.
Have you ever seen his video when he was on TV and he was doing the Santa gimmick thing? You ever seen that? Look it up. I'm telling you, want to laugh? He pulls out, for all the wrestlers in the back, he pulls out gifts for him. It was fantastic. All right, Anthony Squeaks Miller, who I know Chaotic has done a lot for.
Of
and
course,
I know
Squeaks.
he drives a lot of wrestlers like yourself crazy.
Well, his voice alone will do that to
Yes,
you.
he wants to know what your favorite Chaotic match has been so far.
Oof. That's another
I mean, he's there front row every show, right? Pretty much?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely a couple that stand out. Probably my first ladder match with Tommaso.
Yeah.
That one is definitely up there. For 2, pretty green kids, we were only about, maybe a year or 2 in each. I won't get into the details why, but it's still talked about to this day. So, regardless or irregardless, as it were,
right.
I'll take that as a compliment. My match with Dijak at Cold Fury 14, that one was definitely special to me. You know, to kind of come back. You know, I had been idling around the middle card for a while.
Yeah.
Kind of get back on top with somebody, the talent level of Dijak, and to kind of get a chance to work with him when he was still kind of green and still learning, and kind of be able to harness some of his talent.
Yeah.
You know, that was definitely up there.
Nice. Yeah, Squeak's he's a good kid, man, though. You know, he's very faithful to chaotic wrestling. That's all I'll say, really. He really is. Anthony Mark Balkus wants to know, besides yourself, who are your top 5 indie wrestlers in any country? Company. I thought that was a pretty good question.
Past or present?
Any, yeah.
Alex Arion's got to be at the top of the
Okay.
list. He's the Shawn Michaels of New England.
Yeah.
Eddie Edwards, be up there. Matt and Brian together as one.
Yep.
Got to get them on there. Kind of out of the scene these days, so it's hard for me to answer. You know, JT Dunn.
Yeah.
First time I ever watched him work, you know, he stood out as just someone who didn't seem, you know, cut from a mold. You know, a lot of guys, you know, who come up through like a wrestling school have a lot of, you know, similarities to other people since you're working in such close proximity to one another. You know, it's only natural to kind of pick up some habits. I think the way he kind of broke into the business and came up through it, you know, kind of took him away from that. So the way he moves and is very unique to him. Finally, I guess just off the top of my head, I'd have to say Brian Fury.
Nice. Good list. Brandon Belanger, who actually I just had a cancellation, is going to be coming on as a guest on December 4th. Wants to know, when do you think Chaotic Wrestling will be back in Nashua again?
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
We are in talks with Chunkies.
Good.
So we hope to be back there, if not before the new year, shortly thereafter.
Nice. All right. Now, Mav wants to know,
Oh, Jesus.
have your teeth ever healed after he pinned you so ferociously in Lowell that you caught your tooth front teeth in his hard head?
Still smiling, Mav. So yes, I'm all healed.
Nice.
The cage couldn't take me out. Maverick can't either.
Right. There you go. That's right. Well, want to talk about that real quick?
Sure.
How did it I wasn't there, so how did it happen?
Complete freak accident. So basically, Mike Verna was tossing me, you know, to and fro in the cage, picked me up for a power bomb, and went to give me like the, you know, running release bomb that you would do into like a turnbuckle, but into the cage wall. So as I hit the cage wall, it kind of slid down, kind of like, you know, like you would roll downstairs, and you know, I was between the apron and the ropes, so I was kind of sandwiched in between. And I'm just kind of laying there. I had no idea what even happened.
Right.
Verna comes out and tries to pull me out back into the center, and I kind of kick him off because I can feel that I'm not moving.
Right.
So I had thought a piece of cage had caught my wrist tape because, you know, my wrist tape usually comes to right about here.
Okay.
So I kind of like start moving my arm a little bit, seeing if I can, you know, loosen the piece of metal that I can kind of see is, you know, caught on something. And as I move my arm, I can kind of see the skin start to pull like something out of like a Saw movie. It's like, oh, I'm stuck on the actual cage. So I let the ref know, tried to tell him to calm down. He kind of ran away from me.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, security's over, ring crew's over, everyone's calling, everyonene's just kind of losing their minds.
Right.
And I'm just the one, not to say that I was calm, cool, and collected. I was just trying to say, could you please just get me off the cage?
Right.
Luckily enough, they did find wire cutters. And
Yeah.
within a couple of minutes, I was cut free.
Now, was that more painful when they cut you free or when they took it out?
Again, I mean, I should probably play it up for sympathy, but I didn't feel it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel it go
That's
in.
good.
I didn't feel like anything. I got extremely lucky.
Right.
It just kind of caught the meat. Even the doctor said it was more like, a fish hook.
Right.
And my doctor, in the ER that day was actually from Gloucester. I guess it's like the fish hook injury
Yeah,
capital of the world from all the
Fishing.
fishing.
It is, yeah.
So she's had, lots of experience with fish
Right.
hooks. So, again, small little scar and I'm good to go.
Well, do you mind if I take that photo that I used earlier?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
we'll put it on the show so people that don't know will know what we're talking about.
It's a pretty gnarly photo.
Yeah, definitely. Why haven't you and the Logan brothers pursued Ring of Honor, TNA, You know what I mean? WWE. Or have you? I don't think you have because I thought I'm a fan. I think I would have known.
Thank you. You know, I won't speak for the Logans. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't say that I never pursued. You know, I've kind of always had, you know, other interests, other things going on.
Right.
Back also when, you know, I was coming up, when the Logans were coming up, you know, the business isn't what it was, you know, now.
Right.
Where, you know, with the prevalence of social media, you know, where people are making substantial livings, you know, off the indies, that really wasn't the case. Right. So, you know, you needed fallback plans. You needed something else going on. You know, there wasn't, you know, you could drive 100 miles, sure, to your next show.
Right.
But, you know, you weren't going to be making, you know, a couple $100s on merch to get it all back. You know, that kind of side of the business is kind of all new. So, you know, I did a handful of, you know, backstage things with WWE.
Oh, cool.
You know, I've tried out in their ring and such. You know, for me, for my style of wrestling, for the character I am, though, you know, I'm not going to do anything outrageous or, you know, be able to stand out really, you know, from a tryout.
Right.
You know,
No, I understand.
my, you know, my talent or lack thereof, you know, really stems from the connection with the people and the character side of things. So, you know, I kind of need the audience as a foil to really, you know, show, you know, what it is that Chase Del Monte is about.
Right. Nice. You brought up Eddie Edwards earlier. Did you ever wrestle Sabotage with DC and Eddie?
Yep.
That was a hell of a team too.
They were.
And you know, I'd like to ask you, you know, DC. It's been over a year now.
Yep. Just last August.
It's the same day as my brother's anniversary, but different years. How did it affect you? You know, really, because I know it affected a lot of people in this area. A lot of people.
Dave was a good close friend of mine. You know, not as close as some of the other guys I'm sure you know about. Yeah. Me and Dave were always close. He was a guy, again, that, you know, Minnie and Andre knew well. So when I first came into a locker room with him, you know, he was always busting my chops, but, you know, took to me very quickly. You know, it wasn't running me down. Kind of knew that I was one of the boys and could have some fun with me. Me and the Rocket Fred Curry wrestled him and Eddie in Brockton, and this was some sort of fundraiser one-off show at a high school. But man, that's a match that I can remember because man, were they just hot and you know, so easy. You know, Dave was just a heat magnet. You know?
Unbelievable.
Like, I mean, he could, you know, get people close to rioting. And I mean, he wouldn't even need a microphone to do it.
I told the kid you met earlier, I said that DC could come out, not say a word, and within 2 minutes, not even the 2 minutes, the whole room will hate him. He doesn't even have to say nothing.
He's just a natural heel, just the way he looked, just the snarl, the disdain that, you know, he could show in just, you know, a simple facial expression. You know, he was a true out-and-out heel. Like, you know, you knew from just the way he swaggered out to the ring that, you know, he was an asshole.
Right. But very well loved around here. You know?
Oh, for sure.
It's awesome to see how much he was loved, you know. Hopefully he knew it.
Yeah.
You know. Were there ever plans to bring him back to Chaotic? Because he had wrestled for him before.
He had wrestled that. I mean, before I had even started training, he had wrestled, I think, maybe once or twice.
Oh, okay. So he wasn't a regular.
No, he wasn't a regular by any means.
Were they ever thinking about bringing him in as a regular?
I had actually been in talks with him. You know, we had kind of reconnected a couple months prior to his death.
Right.
And, you know, I had told him that I would talk to some people for him and see what I could do. You know, we actually did have a couple things possibly lined up. Unfortunately, never came to be.
Sorry about, you know, the hard question there, but you know, I didn't know DC well at all. I always looked, George told me he didn't hate me because I would have known if he hated me, but I always got that look like, get that mark out of here.
That's the look everybody got.
Yeah. All right, so let's play the name game.
Sure.
Bringing up a bunch of different guys. First name, Tim McNeely.
Local legend. My second opponent ever in Chaotic.
Graduate.
Oh, yeah. Timmy was a guy, we actually reconnected actually at Dave's service. First time I had seen Timmy in a while. But, you know, he was my second match in Chaotic. Another guy, like, even just in one match, you know, you learned a lot from. By that time, he had been done with Chaotic for a little bit. They brought him back kind of as a one-off. And, you know, so he wasn't really doesn't fit the Chaotic mold per se, or didn't have the same kind of, you know, structure that, Chaotic had really been enforcing,
Right.
didn't really assign to the syllabus, if you will.
Yep.
So it was very interesting just to get that kind of different take on things, to get his feedback compared to, what you're going to hear at school, because he was really coming from a worker's mentality and not just, a guy trying to teach a green kid, the rights and wrongs, but more of, the working aspects of it.
Right. I mean, he worked a lot for WWE on
Yep.
TV and doing jobs and stuff. Very, very talented. How about a guy that was on here with Luis Ortiz?
Latin Fury.
Yeah.
The Demon. Louis was another, all the veterans that worked in Chaotic before before I was there, really helped me and took a liking to me. Louis was one who showed me, or not showed me, maybe told me to do moves that I had never even thought to do. And as he would tell me, I was like, all right, then you can do like a springboard leg cross body. Louis, I was like, I don't know. I was like, never done that before, and he just told me to shut up. He's like, you can do it.
Right.
And moves I still do to this day. He was someone. Again, he started with Chaotic. I mean, Chaotic born and bred, really.
Right.
But not really from when the school was, around. So he had a much different outlook.
Okay.
And he was always, up until he blew his Achilles, and he was just been back on shows for a little while. Always looking, not for feedback really, but wanted to know what other people thought. Always wanting to push himself to be the best. Always looking to, what didn't look crisp. Don't bullshit me. What looked bad, what looked great. Like all of those things. And that's something I think I took away the most from him, is just, never settling, never being comfortable in just, working for so many years, of always looking, to have your stuff be the sharpest it can.
Nice. Yeah, he's a hell of a talent. It's just such a shame what happened to him.
Yeah.
Talked about him a little bit, but Maverick Wild.
Maverick Wild. I could probably do a whole hour on just Mav. But again, I mean, another huge, local veteran name who was pretty integral, like when I was coming up. As I said, my second match was for the EWA, which Mav and Heresy were running at the time. Mav got a little more involved in Chaotic at that time, so he was coming to the school. I got the pleasure of working him several times. One of the first, probably within my first 6 or 7 months, we got to do a match for the Chaotic Heavyweight title at the PAV. And that was, I don't believe it was the main event of the show, but, it was built as such, a big title match.
Oh, yeah.
Actually putting in some time, not just, a couple minutes of, undercard action, kind of being pushed into the deeper waters of a match and all of that. And he really taught me a lot. After that match, both on the microphone and afterwards, just between the two of us, he had a lot of kind words to say. And I remember that being something that really clicked home to me, and really kind of gave me that validation that after only 6 or 7 months, if this guy who's been doing it for probably 15 years at the time, I believe it was, if he kind of sees something in me, then maybe I am barking up the right tree.
Nice. Well, he did have some nice things to say. He said you're a tough kid too.
we used to play a game. When we talked, if we saw that we were working each other, I just thought, we're going to do the same, Mav. You hit me hard. I'll see if I can hit you harder, and we'll see who wins.
Right. How about you brought him up earlier too? Now he's wrestling as Warbeard, Handsome Johnny. I spent a lot of time with Handsome Johnny, more than you did Warbeard. Right?
He'll always be Handsome Johnny to me.
All right.
Sorry, Warbeard. And a dozen other gimmick nicknames. He's someone I should definitely have included on my top 5 in New England, but for lack of having time and place, he is one of the best natural workers I've ever seen. For his size, I mean, he is the second coming of Mr. Perfect. At the school, I can't tell you how many times I've watched him just wrestle endlessly for half hour, and with a smile on his face, just continuing to go. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody who loves wrestling more than Handsome Johnny. And for him to finally be getting the recognition, to be doing as well as he is in Japan, and finally have the audience, a world stage to showcase his talent. I mean, I couldn't be happier for more then, if I had to pick one person I'm happiest for in this business, it's certainly Handsome Johnny.
Nice. My fiance's cousin was his teacher in high school.
Really?
They had a, what do you want to be when you grow? And he said a pro wrestler. And when I showed her pictures of him, showed him the matches, the other day I called her and said, put on Access TV. He's on right now. She's like flipping out. You know what I mean? It's really
awesome.
cool. He's had a lot of support his whole life, for this. So that's great for him. Brian Malonis, big man.
Big man. Another person I've been tied to practically my entire career. He was my first real feud in Chaotic. Another guy, it's kind of like Scott Reed. Like, we always just kind of like found ourselves like, back in, involved with one another. A great big man, a guy who can move, a guy who can talk for sure.
Yeah.
He's someone out, who just has that presence about him, especially when he speaks. It doesn't feel put on or forced.
Right.
It really does, it's Brian Malonis talking to you. He's not putting on airs or putting a character on or, reading some sort of scripted version that he's been running through his head.
Yeah.
He's going from the heart.
Right. He's been on here too, and he's got shitty taste in football teams. I said it. He's probably going to smack me when he sees me. How about your old tag team partner, Brandon Locke?
Brando, locked and loaded. Brandon's great. I wish he would come back. He's semi on the shelf right now.
Is he still doing that, the body thing?
I think so.
He looked phenomenal.
Yeah. The last show he was on, and he told me he wasn't coming back, at least for the time being, I beside myself.
Yeah.
Brandon, you look like $1 million. You look like you're ready for TV.
Unbelievable.
But, he comes from the Steve Bradley school. It's funny, as I was saying about JT, about, the kind of the school, you pick up a lot of the same habits. If you look at Scott Reed, Brian Fury, even Eddie Edwards and Brandon, they all kind of have those little pieces of Steve, real ass-kicking, hard-hitting style. Brandon's just legit. He's someone who steps through that curtain and, there's no sort of suspension of disbelief. That guy's a professional wrestler.
Oh, absolutely. Well, might as well talk real quick about him, the Logan brothers. You brought them up a few times. I know that you guys are the Mill City Hooligans, from my home city too.
Yeah, it's a shoot. The Logan brothers, they're my brothers.
Right.
We are, without a shadow of a doubt, family. Yep. I met them within the first couple of weeks of training. It probably wasn't till, oddly enough, that we both got booked down for ECWA. And at that time, again, they were just doing kind of one-offs. Right. So it would usually be, me, Arch, Brian Malonis came for a couple shows, and maybe like one of Mike Crockett, a referee.
Yeah.
When the Logans got brought down, now we had 7 people coming down, so we needed a second car.
Yeah.
I was living in Lowell at the time. The Logans are in Lowell, so it just kind of naturally fell to be that we would drive down together. And that's kind of all it took.
Right.
We kind of just really found each other and kind of, through it all, kind of were with each other through all the different promotions and, different things that came up.
Right. Nice. You brought him up early, saying how he's one of the #1 guys ever to work around here, Alex Arion.
New England.
I do agree with that so much.
New England Shawn Michaels. Going back to the Logan brothers, I know they'd back me up. He's probably the most influential guy that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. The series of matches that I did with him leading up to Cold Fury 8, when I finally won the Chaotic Heavyweight title, really helped form, how I look at wrestling and how, the structure and philosophy behind it. He was just incredible. Next level talent, who probably doesn't get the recognition he deserves.
Nice. Now, he came back for that one show, right? That's it, though?
Yeah, it was just a one-off.
Yeah, that's too bad. How about you tag team with him for a little bit, Chris Dickinson?
Chris Dickinson. So that was only it was a one-off tag team, but we did do a short program.
Oh, you did?
It must have been 2007 by now.
Jersey Open, right?
Yep. Maybe a little bit later than that, but around that same time frame. Chris has made quite the name for himself.
Yeah.
It's It's funny to me only, as I said, when you called him the Dirty Daddy.
Yeah.
When I did that match with the Nigerian Nightmares, he was not the Dirty Daddy then.
Right.
He was a different kid. Still very good. You could see all the pieces. He had the promos down then. I remember, he sent me something, and this was kind of like when YouTube first even started, to date myself. But he showed me it, it was him knocking on some door that, JP was going to be running and stuff, and him just cutting this promo. And you could see he had those different pieces of it. And now, he's got the look, he's got the build, he's got the legitimate, fighting background and stuff. Kid's a beast.
Right. How about the two owners of Chaotic right now, Jamie J. Kowalski, and my old buddy who I used to work with 25 years ago maybe, adult, Mark Bodrick.
I'm glad you know him as adult.
Oh, yeah.
Jamie was pretty much the first person I've ever met, outside of Killer Kowalski in the wrestling business.
Oh, wow.
He was the one who signed me up, pulled me out into the office. I handed over my check to him and, told him this is, you're going to be seeing a lot of me.
Nice.
And he sure was. I will openly admit he's been a thorn in my side, but I have equally been a thorn in his side. We have certainly butted heads several times throughout the years, but there's always been a level of respect.
Right.
I think also going through everything that we've been through has also kind of developed a better relationship, both inside the business and outside of it. We can kind of always, almost come at each other a little bit harder, knowing that, we have a foundation to build on. And adult, he's just a great, great guy, happy to be around.
Oh, yeah.
Another guy who just, loves wrestling.
Right.
Maybe he could rival Handsome Johnny for his love of wrestling.
He loves his wrestling. Man.
Yeah.
That's what really drew us to. We worked at Pizza Hut together. I was working a second job as a waiter. He was cooking. And we hit it off right away because of our love of wrestling. Because I talk about it all the time.
Don't tell him Shawn Michaels is your favorite, though. He's a Ric Flair guy until
yeah,
death.
Yeah, he is. And their time's coming to an end.
Yeah.
How sad is the locker room for that?
I guess with anything, it's bittersweet.
Yep.
There's some new owners coming in that hopefully are going to, change things for the better. But, without Jamie, without Mark, there would be no Chaotic Wrestling to be sold and taken over. Right. I think, after being in it for so long, it's 17 years now. Yeah, it's a long time.
It is.
And to be a long-running, full-time promotion, no time off, no restarts, no anything.
They built it up great for the new owners. Seriously, you know what I mean? Really. It's the I think, no offense to anybody else's promotion, but the number one fed running, week to week, month to month, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Really. Incredible shows. Yeah. Incredible talent.
So, again, with anything like that, it's bittersweet. The work that they put in, will hopefully now pay off. I think for any company to grow and change, there has to be a certain changeover in both leadership, because as long as it was always going to be tied to Jamie, it'll still always be Jamie's company, Jamie's vision, and, he's going to be the final one to get sign-off on everything. And in order for things to, to change and grow and evolve with the business that it's been evolving at a, such an exponential rate over these past couple of years, the company needs to change with it. So, as much as they'll be missed, I think it's going to be a hell of a time for Chaotic Wrestling in the next couple of years.
I hope so. How about an old-timer Chaotic guy, Gino Martino?
Gino! Uncle Gino.
Great guy.
Gino's great. Again, I guess I'm kind of old school. I really do subscribe to the theory that, everyone who came before you is deserving of at least some modicum of respect.
Right.
Gino is not a catch-as-catch-can, high-flying wrestler. He is a legit tough guy.
Oh, yeah.
You break cinder blocks over his goddamn head.
Yeah.
He likes it. Yeah. That's no show.
Yeah.
That's for real. Gino's as legit as they come.
Absolutely.
And, without him, without Louis, without people like, Jose Perez.
Another guy.
New England wouldn't be the hotbed of independent wrestling that it is without people like that to come before us and set the stage.
There was a lot of guys, his tag team with Anthony Ruffo, when he was Ali Muhammad with the Millennium Killers.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of like the Nigerian Nightmares in
Yep.
a way. At the time, they were huge guys.
Yep.
Great tag team. I used to love Gino. He'd come to the edge of the rope and he'd yell, I can't say it here, but who wants to watch a fat fly? And I used to love it. But he was so good. Whether he was a heel or a babyface, like if you saw him outside the arena going to cars, always, like if a kid goes over to him, always the nicest guy.
Uncle Gino.
You know, definitely. How about a guy, I don't know if he's making a comeback or not, but I guess he got a new woman, and he's at the training facility all the time. Julian Starr. You were sitting there wondering what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
it's like, where are you going with that
Yep.
one? Julian Starr, come back soon. I miss Julian. I miss sharing a ring with him. He is another one along the lines of like a Flip Gordon. Watching him move is like watching something, out of this world. It's, almost superhuman. The level of balance and body control and, yeah, just someone who can just like almost look at something and duplicate it.
Right. So I would love to see him come back for sure.
That makes two of us.
No doubt. How about bring up a couple local guys that I like. Slick Wagner Brown.
Slick?
Yeah.
Big fan of Slick.
Me too.
He was another guy. He was kind of in Chaotic before I was.
Yep.
Came back for a short run, but I've been on plenty of shows with Slick over the years.
Right.
Great guy.
Jason Rumble. Jason Rumble.
To know Jason Rumble means that you have to have an impression of Jason Rumble. He's another. I could tell Jason Rumble stories forever. Each one funnier than the next. Yeah. Just one quick one. We were doing a show up in Maine, and he was doing some masked gimmick, and I shot him off, and I screwed up, and I reversed him, and he ended up doing this like triple spin into the buckles, and we get to the back, and I'm just like, what happened? And that Jason Rumble goes, oh man. I miss Jason Rumble.
All right, so I've only got a couple seconds left, but how about did you ever watch the show before? You can be honest, no?
I haven't.
That's not many people do, don't worry. Don't worry, you're not alone. But I used to have a co-host, Derek Dukes, my buddy Derek. You don't know Derek?
Don't know.
All right, he used to work security for, you ever wrestle for Marathi?
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, he worked security for them. That's where I met him. But he came on the board here to help me when nobody wanted to come on. Now I got a guest every week. So something's going. I'm doing something right. But I want to thank you for coming on.
Hey, no problem.
If the hooligans ever want to come on together, please let me know because I'm only booked right now until like the second week of March. I'm going to be start sending feelers out to everybody.
Can we bring beers?
Why not? Yeah.
And you might get yourself some hooligans.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Guys, that's it. We're out. Peace.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.